Welcome to the Meltdown with your host, Vince Thompson, and special guest, Jake Crane of the J-Boy Show.
Welcome back to the Meltdown. I'm Vince Thompson, founder, chairman, and CEO of Melt, along with my partner in crime, Jake Crane of the J-Boy Show. And we've got more madness, March Madness, the Ides of March, last day of March. Fortunately, because I've had a lot of madness happen in my life during March. So I'm gonna, as soon as we finish this, I'm going to go home and get under my bed and finish the remaining few hours of March. But hit us up on LinkedIn or social media at Vinny Inc. Jake, how do they hit you up?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm still figuring LinkedIn out. I think I've kind of got the handle of it.
I'll take care of you on LinkedIn.
Okay, good. Yeah, without a doubt, you're the king of LinkedIn. Kingdom.
I'm the Kingdom.
There you go.
Yeah, don't go there.
Yeah. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at The J-Boy Show. Got a new YouTube channel that's doing really well. It's The J-Boy Show, obviously THE space JBOY space SHOW, and just doing our thing. And helping our audience win the water cooler there, Vince.
Yeah, the feedback on the Meltdown, particularly since you've joined us, and then the feedback from the J-Boy Show. If you guys, you're not following it, I mean, it's unbelievable, the level of guests. They're calling you the new Paul Feinbaum. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or an insult to my dear friend Paulie Feinbaum, but we'll talk about that later. But let's dive into some madness, because I mean, every time you pick up the newspaper or you pick up something online or on the internet or breaking news, I mean, it's just insanity around the business of college sports. Yeah. And so we're gonna unpack it today. Name, image, and likeness. Now Mississippi has moved to the head of the line along with Florida, July the 1st. Mm-hmm. Look for some news coming out of Melt and J-Boy along those lines coming up soon. As we speak, massive case before the Supreme Court that is, my opinion, is going to rule in favor of the student athletes. Mm-hmm. You're going to see all hell breaking loose. Sports viewership habits, where I still can't understand why last night's game had to start at 10 o'clock. It's just way past a lot of people's bedtimes, whether you're old or trying to bring a younger consumer in. The NCAA Board of Governors appears to be as tone deaf as Mark Emmett is, and we're going to talk about that as well. Obviously, wagering, you're at the forefront of that, is massive. The lack of sponsorship investment with women's basketball versus men's basketball, I think you'll see a dramatic shift in that. And quite frankly, I've had clients, advertising in this for years, and really what people don't understand is when you sponsor the NCAA, it's really, if you see all these official partners, and I thought Cap One did an amazing job with Barkley in the recliner, but it really is basically a media buy during men's basketball, and then everything else. Yeah. And so people don't really quite understand that. So we're going to unpack that. What I do love is the fact that some of these great, women's basketball coaches and that I just love, because what people also do understand is that these coaches and these female student athletes' commitment to excellence in their sport is as much or more as football and men's basketball, and I think that's why we love college sports, is the emotion of it. And I'm going to wrap it up with a big hot take. I'm anxious to see what you think of my hot take, but you spend a lot of time in the state of Mississippi. You are a former student athlete. You're a former college football coach. We ask you this. We now know that Florida and Mississippi on July the 1st, this goes into effect. If you're Lane Kiffin or you're Mike Leach, the Pirate, as a coach, how is this shifting your recruiting strategy? And then how is this shifting how you manage these athletes? I mean, what if some athlete's getting paid to tweet from the locker room at halftime?
Yeah, to me, I mean, it can branch off in a ton of different ways. I think the way you manage it is in one bucket and the way you recruit's in another. And recruiting's always evolving. I mean, you look at when Huddle came in, where everybody could recruit nationally, and it wasn't just a couple schools. Now, if you're a D2 or a D3 or NAIA in Florida, you can watch a kid's highlight film from Washington or Wyoming or California and offer that kid if you have scholarships available. But especially when you're recruiting in a league like the SEC, you're always trying to get out in front of everything because, again, like I said, it's always changing.
Well, the SEC is the 7th NFL conference.
It is.
Let's be very clear.
And that's where the best players go to play. We know that. That's where the best, most passionate fan bases are. But to me, it's an advantage. I mean, obviously, if and I liken it to the G League being able to offer kids money out of high school now as opposed to a college. You got a top player like Jalen Green who gets offered $500,000 from the G League as opposed to a full scholarship. Well, he's going to take that $500,000 in an NBA developmental league and go. If you're Ole Miss,
do you blame him?
No, not at all. I mean, not at all. I mean, again, if you can get paid to do what you love, then you should be able to. If you offer a service.
I want you to think about this. It might take an average person coming out of college who's invested $200,000 in their education 5 to 10 years to gross $500,000 in household earnings.
Yeah, and you better be on full scholarship the way with student debt is right now, and that's another story for another day.
That's a whole nother story.
When I look at it, if I'm Lane Kiffin or I'm Mike Leach, doesn't matter. If I'm at Southern Miss, if I'm Will Hall or somebody like that, it would be a huge advantage to say, hey, man, why don't you come here? You can get sponsored by this, be endorsed by this guy, and make money legally and not have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it. What I'm interested to see is, and this is all a domino effect. It's everything. So if Mississippi's going to do it and those SEC schools are going to be allowed to do it, then every other SEC.
2 of the 14 schools
they're
are going
about
to be able to do it in 90 days.
Listen. There is no way in hell, Vince, that Mississippi's going to be able to do one thing and Nick Saban and Alabama and them aren't going to say, because that's going to be a huge disadvantage, and Nick Saban does not operate in the arena of disadvantages.
I believe he generates about 40% of total revenue.
Yeah, he pays the bills.
Football.
He pays the bills.
So I suspect an accelerated bill is in the hopper at the
It may be done tomorrow. It may be getting done as we're speaking. And if Alabama does it, we already know Florida's doing it. If Alabama does it, then you better know Kirby Smart in Georgia's going to do it. You better know that Josh Heupel is, he's only going to be there 3 years, but Tennessee's going to do it. So you look around, it's going to be in every SEC state sooner rather than later, because if you cannot give, even today you look at Vanderbilt putting $330 million into athletics, and they should, because they're about to get kicked out of the SEC if they don't start taking it more seriously. And I'm not talking about letting just anybody play football.
They're alumni base, healthcare mecca, entertainment, country music mecca.
Look at baseball.
I mean, in baseball. So, question, put you on the spot. If a kid asks you, what can your university do for my brand, how do you answer that as a coach?
Well, a lot of it depends on if what you can do is legal, and in some
let's
cases,
just assume it's legal.
It's everywhere. Again, it's all going to be, to me, just like anything, just like with facilities, just like when you're talking about offering new classes, it's whoever is going to be able to structure it the best with the biggest name, because kids are smart enough nowadays to understand it's different if I'm getting offered an endorsement from the local pub in the college town as opposed to Gatorade. The question to me is, and I'm very interested to see this, and you can look at the rankings, the top 100 and whatever, system you use. I recommend using Coach Pinkston, J-Boy Show's new ranking manager, does an unbelievable job as opposed to the other guys. He's an actual coach. He doesn't do it based on subscriptions like everybody else. But when you look at that, I wonder what percentage of those guys are going to be offered those endorsements at what level. Because here's what it's going to come down to. No longer is it going to be, all right, well, I'm down to Alabama and Florida, and I'm basing it on who's got the nicest football complex, who's got a barbershop, who's got a cool players lounge. It's, well, Gatorade offered me an endorsement of $150,000 if I go here, and then Reebok offered me an endorsement of $125,000 in here. So, Coach, are you going to match that offer or not? It's going to turn into an auction. That's what it's going to turn into. And guess who's going to win the auction? The guy who always wins the auction. The guy with the most what, Vince? Money.
Right. That's right. And I listen. I've been on the. We were just talking about. I was on Auburn campus in 1980, and this has been coming for 4 decades, and it is seismic. Speaking of seismic. There is, for the first time in many, many years, a major case being argued today before the Supreme Court. And what I've read coming out of it, even conservative justices like Brett Kavanaugh are appalled at the business practices of the NCAA. So if you have got a conservative, pro-business, ostensibly judge siding and commenting in favor of the student athletes, if this ruling comes down, forget about the states. All hell is about to break loose, and it probably will force some hands in Congress sooner than later. Now, interestingly, with the Democrats in control of Congress and in the White House, they're going to be more aggressive on behalf of the student athletes as well. So so let's crystal ball this. If you're a parent, and by the way, the NCAA wouldn't even let these parents come to the ball games if they couldn't afford it. That's absurd. That's how absurd this has gotten. Mm-hmm. Even in the old days, they would allow them to do it. But if you've got a crystal ball, let's flip the script. If you're in the living room with your son or daughter who's being recruited, what's the coach saying to you? What's the lens of that?
Well, you know me, Vince. I don't really get political, so I'm going to answer your question in this fashion. When I look at it from the coaching standpoint, number one, everything is within the framework of the rules that I am allowed to do. And in my opinion, I look at it from the vantage point of it is a labor and a service, and the labor that is being done and the money that is creating is not nearly getting enough back than what it should be. So if I'm the coach, I'm always going to side with the player. And when I go in there and I talk to the parents, Vince, the first thing that I'm going to say is, I am here to help you guys not only academically get that degree, because they can never take it away from you, right, but to put you, not only you, the player, but to put your family in the best position possible from a financial standpoint within the framework of the rules. And it has to be organized, because it's just like anything. It's like pitching anything to anybody, like pitching something to a sponsor. You have your pitch deck, you have the numbers. We're going to be able to do this and have it broken down within semester or within the quarter, however you want to do it, because it's going to pass. It's going to pass, without a doubt.
Well, don't you foresee that a coaching staff will have to have a chief branding officer?
Oh, 100%. Well, it's funny. We've started to change the name of roles. Back in the day, there really wasn't a director of player personnel. Heck, you go far back enough, the coaches, just like in high school and at junior college, a lot of times were helping with academics and making sure all that stuff, and that still happens a little bit today. But now, you remember you used to have the director of operations. Some guys still call that, football ops guy. Well, now that's chief of staff, because I think it just sounds cooler.
You educated me, because I'm like, what the hell is quality control? And you said, well, that's an evolution or a fancy name for graduate assistant.
Yeah, it's a way for them to hire somebody that does. Now, it can vary, because now you got the word analyst. What's the difference between an analyst and quality control? It's about adding people to your roster. It's nothing about juicing the roster.
When
That's all it
Saban
is.
hires Bill O'Brien as a quote unquote analyst, what does that mean?
So I'll give you an even better one. Will Muschamp's an analyst at Georgia right now. What an analyst means is, number one, nobody's asking him to go get coffee for anybody like a GA. Number two, they're bringing him in there to consult. It's a consultant. That's what it is. It's another word for a consultant.
Is he a contractor or an employee of the university? It's interesting. You and I tried to get a quote unquote analyst to come on your show, and the NCAA rules forbade that.
Yeah.
But which still makes no sense again.
Yeah. It makes no sense. To me, from a coaching standpoint and the value you are bringing to the staff, it is a consultant. It is somebody that you're in there watching film. You're coming up with game plans. Hey, coach, what do you think about this? What do you like against this? It's just being able to negotiate really against yourself in there to find the best game plan from a guy like a Will. You look at Will Muschamp of Georgia, a guy that was a head coach, understands defense and offense inside and out. It's a great asset to have. But when I look at it, I guess from a liability standpoint, you would say he is an employee, because he is getting paid from the school. They're not doing it for free. But from a work standpoint, it's almost like he should have a 1099, because that's what he is. He's a contractor or a consultant. It's really hard to do a certain job.
I still think it's brilliant. Like
it is.
Saban brings these NFL guys in.
Yeah.
I mean, how genius is that?
Well, he is literally running a coaching rehabilitation center.
I know. By the way, that could be another show or podcast.
It really could, because that's what it is, and it's genius because it's efficient and it's finding more ways. I always say Nick Saban is like the master splinter of the Ninja Turtles. He is going to find a way to help the group out the most. But the coolest part to me is he has analysts getting head Division I jobs. Butch Jones was an analyst for Alabama and then gets hired to be a head coach in Division I. And they're turning up. Look at Steve Sarkisian. Totally changed the trajectory of his career.
Sark got kicked off the bus or the plane after having a few nips.
Yeah.
And I know this to be true. When Nick hired Lane, they had to personally go to Birmingham and bow down and kiss the ring of Mike Slive to get that blessing. And only Saban. By the way, I know this to be true.
Oh, I believe
because I know people that were in the room. Only Saban could have gotten that done. So I continue to go back to this, and what I am anxious to see is we're talking about the sports viewership. We're talking about sports consumption. I'm anxious to see what the numbers look like this fall for the NFL and college football with full stadiums, full tailgates, sort of back to a hopefully people are back in their offices, a little bit more of a cadence or a rhythm of their life. Will it be there, as legal wagering continues to sweep? But, because I like to think, well, we know that live sports is still the best value. That's why the NFL just got $100 billion and the SEC's got $7 billion.
Can't recreate it.
And all that. And then we got the fantasy and we got the wagering, but I'm thinking 2020 is a little bit of an outlier, but then last night the Michigan UCLA game did not tip off until after 10 o'clock. And by the way, I got dear friends that run CBS and Turner, and I'm like, why?
Yeah. First off, you got two games. Why does one not start at 6:30, and the other one not start at 8:30? It makes absolutely no sense. And to your earlier point, I think we have two things going on in 2021. And I think you got to look at it, again, in two different buckets. You have the live games, which going back to the stadiums, the tailgate is going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts. It's going to be it's crazier than it's ever been. Then you have the viewership from television and all the cord cutting that's going on. So I think you could have a humongous...
Well, the cable business model is dead.
It's dead. You could have the biggest in-person electric atmosphere, tailgating, success for local businesses, hotels, all that stuff that you've ever had.
Mayor of Auburn on this fall.
Yeah, and the smallest amount of viewership from a TV standpoint with all the cord cutting that you've ever had. And I think that's such an interesting wave, and I think it shows you really kind of how the consumer is. And you're right, you can never... It's funny, I always make the analogy, practice, you are trying to simulate the game as much as you can. You will never simulate the game as much as the actual game. The live experience from a fan is in the same boat.
Right.
You will never be able to recreate that. I don't care if you have virtual reality, which I think we'll end up having on the front rows of games eventually
100%.
That people will pay top dollar for.
Or AI or wearing
we'll have robots writing on screens towards said and done.
Yep. But here's the thing though too is that I'm not sure this topic is being covered the right way, because I think the definition of viewership is going to have to change. Because I may not want to stay up late. I may not want to watch the whole game. I may have other things going on, and I may just want to see. You've always said this is that red zone was
brilliant.
Was brilliant, and I do think, and it's going to be fascinating to see though. Most sports fans still don't want politics in the consumption of their sports, and so we're going to see. We're going to see where this really sort of spins itself out, because I still think that we're on the tip of this major story, and what is not been also covered is advertisers and sponsors fund, other than the carriage rates of cable providers, they fund all of this, and they do it in how can I reach this target and this big enough audience, and that is why you're seeing the wagering sponsor dollars flocking in, because that's a different strategy and it's a different set of eyeballs than trying to sell a Coca-Cola, a Cap One, and all of these people you're seeing during advertising during the Final Four. So I don't think the story is really declining in viewership. Use yourself. You're 31 years old. My son's 21. Use your viewing habits, say, versus mine, which are probably a little more traditional.
Yeah, well, I really don't say 31 years old. I just feel like I'm on level 31,
right.
And then next year I'll be on level 32. It's just a way to look at it. But no, you're exactly right. Like the way with the live betting, that's a huge part of it. We talk about wagering. People, even my age, because when I was coming out of high school, Facebook was getting really, really big. That's when it was getting really big. Then Twitter really jumped in, and being able, again, you get so used to looking at your phone and relying on your phone
it's an addiction.
For video content. You're a cyborg. That's what you are.
Right.
Like people don't realize what your phone can tell you where to go. It can show you what you're watching. It can order food. It does everything. We are basically, so eventually they're going to have a chip that they put in you. You can just do it from there. I think Elon Musk will have that done probably within the year. But
they may be doing that with the virus shots.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
Yeah, but from viewership standpoint, it's multitasking. That's what it is. My age and the younger guys.
I think the term is consumption.
Consumption. It is. It's consumption in different areas. I can sit here and have you can say you have the game on TV, but everything that can go on that TV, I can be able to watch the game, check my fantasy, check my bets, make bets, order DoorDash, text my girlfriend, boyfriend, however you get down.
Order a cocktail.
And, do whatever. And do it all at the same time. And
hey, by the way, I was on my patio grilling out, smoking a cigar, watching Final Four. You can't make this up.
You can't. And if you don't.
But it may not necessarily have been captured by any measurement service.
No, well, again, just like anything, how did people figure out that to not walk off cliffs? Well, if you guys walked off cliffs and they looked down and said, nope, we're not going to do that. So once they end up being able to gauge, and however they figured that out, that's why people that are a lot smarter than me, just like we talk about the recruiting, right? The way it's evolving, the people that are out in the forefront of it. Well, how do you get on the forefront of something? You get the high ground. Well, what is the high ground? You find out how to measure it. You find out the demographic, and then you attack. And the people that are able to do that the most, because my age, I'm not sitting down, and people younger than me are not sitting down and watching. That's why I watch the NCAA tournament now. And listen, I understand you got to have commercials, but you have a commercial that's commercials that are 3 minutes long. Then you show two possessions, and then you got another commercial.
What did you
ridiculous.
say? Didn't you say I was watching commercials in a basketball game?
Yeah, I was watching commercials, and then a basketball game broke out.
Yeah.
And for people that are my age, what are you doing during the commercial break? You are literally looking at your phone. The only thing that's good about the commercial breaks is the live betting stuff doesn't change. You have time to make your live bets.
If our business people, sponsors are listening, J-Boy is the prototype of what we're going to all be encountering in the sponsorship and agency business. Let's shift gears a little bit. I'm gonna throw two words out to you.
Okay.
Tone deaf. Mm-hmm. And that's my words of the day to describe NCAA President Mark Emmert and the Board of Governors. Now, listen, I've been in this business for 40 years. And when a crisis breaks out, the first and only thing I counsel any CEO is just be transparent and honest. What if, when all of this stuff with the women's basketball hit in San Antonio, they just said, you know what? We messed up. Yeah. And I'm sorry. Yeah. And I'm personally flying into San Antonio today on my NCAA jet. And we're going to, because the people in San Antonio that run these events, I know them really, really well. I produced my first Final Four there in 2004. Mm-hmm. And they are the world's best at it. And I've talked to several of them, and they were mortified because they think their city got a black eye out of this. And I said, I can assure you that you didn't. And then the Board of Governors say they're satisfied, and then Emmert hires a law firm to evaluate event logistics. Yeah. And I'm sure that that firm's getting several $1,000s an hour. And then he says lack of communication and focus. on COVID led to the oversights? Huh?
Yeah.
And how about he could have just said, "Hey, we were wrong."
Yeah.
And by the way, he could have said, "Hey, look, we get 80 times more money, and that's where our resource." I would have admired him. All of this gobbledygook from COVID causes oversight. You had a year. By the way, they hadn't had a Final Four in 2 years. You had 2 years.
Yeah. Well, first off, talking about the NCAA president, the board of governors, it's kind of like when JFK fired Alan Dulles from the CIA, and then they put Alan Dulles on the Warren Commission board to find out how he died. It's amazing how they came to that conclusion that it was, whatever. But when I look at it, and what's the hardest thing for people that are at that level of power to do? And it's hard for a lot of people that just normal people to admit they're wrong. And when I look at this, this is not just a flaw.
A character flaw.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not just a flaw of evaluation. It is a character flaw, as you put it. But the stubbornness, because I think people know authenticity. I think people can figure out when somebody's blowing smoke. And what blows my mind is when I look at this whole situation, how many times, let's just think, in the history of the NCAA, let's just take the NCAA the past 10, 20 years. Has the NCAA ever admitted they were wrong on anything?
Never.
That you got a better chance of finding the snuffleupagus than you do of the NCAA admitting that they're wrong. And once you have a monopoly, and because I'll ask you this, and again, I know you got friends on the NCAA, I don't, but what does the NCAA do? What do they do? It's the same thing. If you can tell me what a charge is in basketball, what a catch is in football, and what the NCAA does, you should run for office.
So 2 or 3 observations. First of all, this guy gets paid $3.5 million.
To do what? Hire firms to do the job for him and then never admit he's wrong?
Yeah.
That sounds like a hell of a gig.
And let me give you another story. These are the same people today arguing against student athletes in the Supreme Court of the land. The same people. And those lawyers are probably getting several thousand an hour. But let me give you a real life story. Because for many, many years, we were responsible for getting the hydration equipment pre-COVID on the sideline. Powerade and body armor. I had a team at a regional basketball event. A member of the NCAA staff ran us out of the arena, being logo police. No, by the way,
I believe you.
You think I'm making this up?
No, I agree with you. I
and by the way,
after coaching underneath him, I know.
By the way, this was a person that I had known pretty well for many years. I literally, and my people were treated like criminals, and you wouldn't believe how they were talked to, and I mean like crazy stuff. And by the way, this wasn't the first time that had happened. The 2 guys that ran the NCAA championships, Greg Shaheen, Mark Lewis, these guys thought they were czars.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to get a lot of slings and arrows of it, but I'm saying what the truth is. Yeah. And by the way, they're good people, great family and all that. But Shaheen would come in the room like the Pope, and I was like, I don't get this. It's a basketball game.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. I've got an idea. We can find out who's more important. Let's put Mark Emmert and the Board of Governors, take their best 5, and let them play Gonzaga for 2 halves, and let's see how they do. Because I guarantee you, if you flip the script, that if you put Mark Emmert and them on the court, you wouldn't have 3 people outside of their family watching. To me, it's gross. I'll give you a great example. Oregon State. I have no idea how much money that Oregon State has made the NCAA and the broadcasting people. They lose in the Elite Eight.
Right.
They go back to the hotel, and the NCAA says, "Nope, you're not going to get a night's sleep. We're not going to, we're not going to take care of you. You've got to go get on a flight at 1:15 in the morning and fly back." At the end of the day, I'll say it again. What does the NCAA do except be the middleman? What do they do? What do they do other than enforce
that decision?
Oh, it all goes back. Number one, I guarantee you that the coaches from Oregon State didn't want to do it. I guarantee you that the SID, the AD from Oregon State, all of them didn't want to do it. It is predicated on the NCAA because they're the ones that say, okay, well, we're paying for all the travel and all this stuff because you made the tournament. Then you look at how much money that costs compared to how much money Oregon State made.
Oh, by the way, let me be very clear.
Disgusting.
Let me be very clear.
It's a sweatshop.
Those hotels in Indy, they had to rent those rooms at a huge discount. They weren't rack rate.
Oh yeah.
So as we move on, we just have a saying down in Lower Alabama that the fish rots at the head.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah. Well, it's the truth. Women lie, men lie, numbers don't lie.
And then we've talked about this ad nauseum, but every day you pick up it's and by the way, it's gonna be fascinating to see how gaming, wagering, and gambling is really truly going to impact the college game, because the student athletes are going to continue to say, hey, we're the product. We need some kind of cut. And again, I think it's fun. I think it's hilarious. I think it keeps, every day we pick up, Bally's renames the 29 regional sports networks. The Win is putting up a podcast, and we're not even about what you and I got to unpack the collegiate esports phenomenon as well, because you don't have these kids that are playing collegiate esports. They're getting paid now, because they've been getting paid. My son was making money playing Rocket League when he was 13. So this is here to stay. But okay, I want you to put your coach's hat on again. How is that going to impact the performance of student athletes? Yeah,
well, to me, once you start mixing the wagering with the college athletics, and the good thing is at least we have somewhat of a blueprint for it with professional athletes and the way that these wagering companies are allowed to endorse them and stuff like that. But you have to because again, you'll have people just like in anything. People rob banks, people do this and the other. People, there will be nefarious
There's always
stuff.
Bad apples.
There's always bad apples, but the penalty for that needs to be about as severe as it can get within the realm of nothing crazy. But that is something, one of the few things in this whole deal that the guardrails are going to have to be as high as possible, because if you start having wagering companies sponsoring certain players, like a player sponsored by Penn Gaming or somebody like that, there has to be an oversight committee. That's right. What they have to have. And it doesn't need to be a bunch of suits in Indianapolis. It needs to be actual people that do this for a living,
right? Not
just people that think they live to do this.
Question. What about the refs? Shouldn't we make them full-time?
So that's another. I think that referees,
the NFL refs are not full-time.
Have one. Oh, it's
and the lady, by the way, called the Super Bowl has roots in Chatham, Alabama, and Lower Alabama. By the way, we got to get her on. But what about? Because hey, they didn't call that the Baylor young lady got just pillaged as she was moving to the hoop. And on UConn, and they didn't. It was a non-call.
I wonder why, Vince.
By the way, here's another one.
I wonder why.
There's no way in hell the NCAA was ever going to let Bruce Pearl hoist that championship trophy in 2019 during one shining moment. No way. A coach that had show cause over, by the way, a backyard barbecue. There was no way that they were going to let him do that.
Yeah, well, Vince, I was going to ask you this after the show. I'm surprised you're not rooting for UCLA, because I thought you think it's the upper corner of Lower Alabama. But when I look,
it's not.
That's exactly right. But the way I look at it's like this, and we've had problems with officiating and wagering before. Just look at the NBA. We've had it before. The guy
that wrote the book, Tim?
I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. It is, but to me, I think, and this is just the whole thing with officials, is that I think officials are in one of the only jobs where you do not get held accountable for very critical mistakes.
That and weathermen. That's exactly right. Now, I'll tell you, in Mobile, I feel bad for the weatherman, because all he had to do was get up there and just say, listen, it's going to rain at some point today, and that's the truth. And he had, it really wasn't that tough down there. But when I look at it, there has to be an oversight committee, and it can all fall under the same oversight committee for the players and the officials, because who are the three people that can affect the game the most? Who are they?
The players, the coaches, and the referees. The players, the coaches, and the referees. And I'm also of the fact, because I'll tell you this right now, I think that Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame because it's different to me. It's different to me as a coach if you bet on yourself. Now, you shouldn't be allowed to bet in general on your team,
but I don't
just
think
in
the punishment
principle,
fit the crime.
it doesn't fit the crime. But we have got to make sure, because we even saw this at Auburn, about 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember the kid's name.
Yeah.
Who got caught shaving points.
Yeah.
That is to me the ultimate sin of a player, because you're doing something that's going against your team regardless. Either way, you're
Right.
playing outside of what you should be. And again, I want to make sure that we can balance all this ability to be paid with labor without losing the purity of the game, which that's tough. That's kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth.
It's going to be. I think, but as you always say, the market sort of balances it out.
It does.
And I'm kind of go back a little bit. We've got this headline here: lack of sponsorship in women's tournament. It's not necessarily lack of sponsorship. It's the lack of activation. I've sat in on 10,000 of those meetings, but I will also tell you, I really enjoy the women's basketball. I love women's softball. It is so much fun to watch those kids in Oklahoma while they're doing the World Series. And my dear friend Ray Katz said it. He's like, nobody's ever going to get fired by just putting a TV spot on.
Yeah.
But it's easy when you know these eyeballs when the men's versus the women. But what I always pushed on everybody, and I do think NIL is going to open up tremendous amounts of opportunities for the female student athletes. But I always said, why don't you decouple some of these? So the stat is right. When the NCAA sells its rights, it's all of these championships, 135 different. People don't realize this. It's 135 different competitions, because you have Division I, Division II, and Division III, and then there are all of these various venues and all that. But I'm like, why don't you sell a different structure of sponsorship, a different category of sponsorship, a different usage right, and 80% of all household purchases, or what they call the household category manager, are made by the mom, the females, and those decisions as well. And so this still all ladders back up to, Professor Emmert and all these people are not CEOs, and they are CEOs of multi-billion-dollar businesses, but they don't think from a business perspective. Because I would always say, the bulk of my clients' activation fees were always going to go against March Madness, because that's where all the love was being given from the property owner, and so I think that all of this conversation is very healthy, as painful as it may be for some people, and I think that I always said that that humility, there needed to be a lot of humility inserted into the NCAA organization, and I think we're seeing that as well. I love the fact that Coach Gino and Coach Staley and they are now truly empowered to speak up, because. And you've said this, is that there's not much greater love than a coach's love for his or her student athletes, because you're their parents or an extension of their parents for 4 years, and shouldn't have neutral site games. But I got a hot take for you, which I think is going to be tremendous to grow this sport. And by the way, I walked into the NCAA headquarters maybe in 05, 06, or 07, and I made a presentation that one central city for 1 week should be the ultimate celebration of basketball. Men's Final Four, women's Final Four. They always, as we said, pre-COVID, they have the National Association of Basketball Coaches Convention, which I call it the Tall Persons Convention.
The Tree Festival.
And the Tree Festival. And the McDonald's All-American, which I started activating on behalf of Coca-Cola and Powerade in 2002. One of my first ones was with LeBron in Cleveland. I personally escorted Michael Vick to Cleveland to be a judge in the slam dunk contest. I mean, I really did. It was pretty amazing. And that was right before Michael Vick had a couple of professional hiccups, shall we say. Yeah. But I just had this vision that, like, everything that's right about basketball, let's bring them all together.
Yeah.
And then you know, I mean, you got to pay to get in the fanfare and all this crazy stuff. And let's bring all the school kids and all the junior high teams and all the high school teams and people that can't afford to go to these things and give them exposure to these things. And I laid this whole plan out.
Yeah.
And they threw me out of the room.
Yeah. Well, you know, in this case, I don't think there's such thing as too much of a good thing. And being able to have all that stuff in a central location when it's hot, when everybody's excited about it, I think it's a great idea and probably something that will end up happening. And you're talking about, you know, almost bundling the biggest things in collegiate athletics and, you know, high school athletics with the McDonald's All-American game that bleeds in. But, you know, what something I think that is huge is that I don't think people realize that the fan is very seasonal, just like the players are,
right.
You know, or used to be before everybody started specializing in it.
Right.
Whenever you'd be able to corral all that stuff in one place, I mean, just the passion and the electricity and the memories that are getting made. You talk about growing the game, growing the brand, and you talk about saying, okay, well, instead of putting all these games in different places and doing this, that, and the other, there's one central location, obviously divvied out in time, like you said, over a whole week, where you can find the best of the men's basketball, the best of the women's basketball, and the best of high school basketball,
what I wanted to
all
do?
In one spot.
I wanted, and they really thought I was crazy.
To quote McDonald's, I'm loving it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean, there's my boy Ronald right there. I wanted to have it spaced out where, like, the practices, like, all right, you got this ticket, and on Wednesday or Thursday, you got to come in and see the All-Americans practice, boys and girls.
Yep.
You got to see the men's practice, the women's practice, and then during the course of the days, on Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that it was a master ticket. So let's say you would have had the Baylor girls and UConn girls, and then your next game would have been, say, Michigan and Alabama.
Yeah.
And so why not put 80,000 eyeballs on both of them?
Yeah.
And then you could cum the value of this from a television perspective and ads perspective and sponsors perspective. And literally, you would have thought that I was an alien that had landed in the Taj Mahal. And they were like, well, that's the stupidest thing we've ever heard. I'm like, okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, it wasn't their idea.
Exactly. And so maybe you and I'll do this together. Maybe we'll take this out to
I will put my coaching hat on. I think we change the practice to a shoot-around, so you're not giving away anything schematically that you're doing for the game. But I'll give you the caveat, and throw an autograph session in there like they do, for spring practice and stuff like that, where you remember, I'll remember seeing the Alabama fans sprint on the field to go get it. Why would you not let them go to shoot-around? Let the kids go out there and shoot baskets with the guys or whatever, and then sign autographs. I think it's a brilliant idea. Again, well, my thing is, who's getting hurt and all that? What is it? What does it hurt?
And how about give them an ice cold Coca-Cola and a Chick-fil-A sandwich, and I mean, let them go to the fanfare and all this, and I know I'm talking, sometimes I talk out of both sides of my mouth, but I always had this gnawing in my gut that something was never right. Mm-hmm. And that's why, I built the first free concerts that everybody could go in, because because here's the other thing that it does have a giant economic impact to the city. Now, all these fluffy numbers they talk about.
And you would juice it by how much more would you juice it?
A gazillion. And like we were talking about letting the schools out on Friday. We were talking to the governors, and we were talking to major transportation companies that could get the kids from A to B and B to A and make it a field trip and all these kind of things. But I think, like I said, as painful as some of these conversations are, and I think you're going to see major stars like LeBron and Jay-Z and KD, and they're going to start leaning in with their money and their voice and their platforms. And this would also, and I know that, like I said, my clients and these corporations, we're all people. We've struggled with it as well. So I think that we'll see if the NCAA even survives, but because we know that college sports, we love it. We love the emotion of it. We love the passion. You look at that Juzang kid. I mean, just finding it deep. Carrying that team on his back for a long time. But we'll see where this hot take goes. Final Four's here. UCLA, Gonzaga, Baylor, Houston. I mean, anything can happen. The redemption of Kelvin Sampson at Houston. Does Mark Few? Does he finally get after? I think he started that program from scratch at 23 years or 27 years.
Somewhere around. I think it was 23.
Just what a fella.
And then, stuck there the whole time.
The fella at UCLA, Mick
Cronin.
Cronin. I love this.
He looks like he's like the some leader of like an Eastern European country.
Right. I love that. We've got an SEC only SEC team in both of them, and you said it. And you got slings for it. SEC basketball men's was down this year, but we got a lot of fun stuff coming. So the great J-Mac. Former, Karnak when Johnny Carson, if you've got your headpiece on and you've got the envelope to your head, I mean, he's taking these. I know you're going to unveil a lot of these picks later, but who you feeling right now on both sides?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been pretty hot lately. We're 16-5, I think, somewhere 16-6.
You're
in our
so
last,
hot. You're
the Gonzaga -4 at the half. I mean, I felt bad about putting that one out. That was like stealing. I almost
like
I'm
following you around with a fire extinguisher.
I know.
You're so hot.
But the way I look at it, I think this Houston and Baylor game is going to be a good game. I think Baylor's size on the inside and the way they're able to kind of extend you on the three-point line. Houston really didn't get that from Oregon State and were able to have a lot of open threes. They typically don't shoot it super well, but they crash the boards very hard. Look, we're going for a Baylor-Gonzaga matchup. That's what we're going for. And I tell you what, a lot of people are on the Gonzaga train, and I think Gonzaga is playing phenomenally. I'm watching those guys. It's like poetry in motion. Mark Few has like those guys NBA playing team for each other. Every time Timmy hits me with the handlebar salute with the mustache. He looks like White Goodman from Dodgeball with that mustache. Right. But, it's going to be Gonzaga and Baylor's what it's looking like. And I really feel, you talk about gnawing at your gut, and everybody's going to be putting money on Gonzaga. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 4 or 5 point spread going Gonzaga's way. But watch out for Baylor. The Bear with Davion Mitchell, he's probably the only guy that cannot shut down Jalen Suggs, but at least slow him down a little bit. And I like what Ochoa's going to do against Drew Timme. I think he's going to be physical in him. And let me give you a hint. Don't fall for the pump fake. Don't fall for the pump fake. Right. Headbands and high socks, it's a problem when they make it to the Final Four. Don't trust it as far as you can throw it. But I like Baylor in the upset to win the national championship. Mark Few.
You heard it for him.
You heard it here first. Everybody's going to be screaming Gonzaga. We're on the other side of the fence, and I think the Baylor Bears
by the
and
way,
Scott
how many
Drew.
brackets and hearts will be broken if it's UCLA and Houston in the final two?
Well, I'm going to be looking outside to make sure the same meteor that didn't wipe out the dinosaurs isn't coming down, because that would be – and you know what's crazy, and not a lot of people remember this, Baylor and Gonzaga were supposed to play during the regular season, and the game got canceled because of COVID.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. Anything can happen in a one-off.
It's basketball, baby.
And by the way, these are kids.
Yeah.
And and the women's. I mean, I love. You just gotta. You gotta love UConn. But I mean, again, who knows? What do you feel about that one?
Well, it's always hard to bet against UConn, and when I watch. Where I think the women's game has made strides is the interior play and the post play. You're starting to have a lot of dominant post players in women's basketball. I love Paige Beckers from UConn, the true freshman. I think she's the best player in women's college basketball.
She's amazing. I love her.
But when I look at it, I like South Carolina. I think South Carolina has a chance to do it. Baylor, I thought that was a horrible call at the end, like you talked about. That girl got fouled. But at the end of the day, it is basketball. It's a crapshoot, and I think it's going to be very interesting to watch.
I don't think the powers that be wanted Baylor at a shot at winning both of them. I really don't.
To me.
Now I know I'm a conspiracist.
Well, your eyes don't fool you on that one. Like anybody, my dog could have told you that was a foul. I just wonder. And listen, the old argument of, well, it's at the end of the game, we're going to let him play. Whoa. When did we start being able to change the rules of officiating? You call the game the same from the beginning to the end. In what other world does that work? And again, when there's no accountability, when an official can make a horrible call, and I know everybody says, oh, it's a hard job. Oh, they don't get to see it on slow-mo. Well, wait a minute. How many sports have replay? I know you don't get to see it every time, but it's the only job where you don't get held accountable. They make a terrible call, other than the weatherman. They make a terrible call, and you get a press release oh, I'm sorry. Right. Oh, I'm sorry, kid that has worked 40 years every day and grinded this hard to do this. I'm sorry that I made a bad call, and there's no repercussions for my actions.
I still don't think that ball went off that Alabama player's britches.
Well, it all goes back to me. Ty Jerome double dribbled, man.
That's a mic drop there.
Yeah,
so
he double dribbled.
I can't.
Don't at me.
I can't do it anymore. So great, another great meltdown. Jake Crane of the J-Boy Show, Vinny Ink here, doling out madness, March Madness, Madness of March, the Ides of March. We're counting down the hours to that's over. And if you haven't already bought Bill Brand New, it's smoking red hot. Building your personal brand to land that first job in a brutal COVID and post-COVID job market. Make sure you do it now. And my partner in crime, Jake Crane, J-Boy, is the prototype of Bill Brand New. I mean, like I'm either going to write a book on how he did it, or he's going to have a book coming out this fall. We'll talk more about that later. But Jake Crane, I'm Vince Thompson, founder, chairman, CEO of Melt, and that's it for this week's Meltdown.
You've just listened to The Meltdown. Remember to follow us on Twitter and Instagram @MeltATL, and follow Vince @VinnyInc, and on LinkedIn as Vince Thompson.